On to some quarterback-needy teams. We're going to start in Tennessee. So, Jeremy, before Mina and Bill make their plans here, what are you hearing about the plans for quarterback there for the Titans?
Yeah, Laura, so I do expect the Tennessee Titans to snag a veteran quarterback in this market. They're gauging that interest right now over the weekend, planning for free agency. I don't sense that it will be that top-of-market Sam Darnold type player. Could be a mid-tier type option, maybe even like a Zach Wilson type player who's been a backup, who's still got some upside they could bring in. Because most people around the league still do expect that Miami quarterback Cam Ward will be firmly on Tennessee's radar and could be the pick at number one. If you do that, they just need somebody to hold down the fort for a year. They don't feel like they're in contention playoff style right now. They got a year or two to build this thing.
Of course, they do still have Will Levis. All right, Mina, what do you think would be your plan for a quarterback that fits in Tennessee?
I've got them as an Aaron Rodgers destination, and I have that in large part because what Jeremy described there, which is I don't think they're going to go top of the market in free agency. I also don't think they should spend their top draft pick on a quarterback. We talk all the time about whether or not teams are capable of facilitating young quarterbacks so they can develop, and right now I don't think this Titans roster is. If they're able to maneuver down, trade down just a couple of spots, still get Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter and pick up draft capital, continue adding elsewhere, that to me would make a lot of sense. Then you sign a veteran like Aaron Rodgers in free agency.
Yeah, I'm going with Will Howard, obviously not with their first round pick, but with a second selection because they're going to use the first pick on Abdul Carter in this scenario. Look at what the Eagles did, right? I mean, we just saw them win the Super Bowl with a great pass rush. The Titans just cut Harold Landry, the veteran edge rusher today. There's an open spot there. So Abdul Carter on the edge with Jeffrey Simmons and Javonte Sweat. Bring in Will Howard at the, maybe with your second round pick, maybe a trade up to the end of the first round. But I like what we saw, the explosive growth from him in college. He grew massively year on year as a prospect, just like Joe Burrow did. I don't think he's the same caliber of prospect, of course, but I think you have the opportunity to grow with the system, have a guy who can throw downfield. We saw a lot of explosive plays in that offense. And then you're adding maybe the best player in the draft in the first round. So maybe you hit on two spots in the same draft. That's a great landing opportunity for Tennessee.
Yeah, Bill, a perfect scenario for the Tennessee Titans is if they can move back in the draft from 1 to, say, 2 or 3. If they can get Cleveland or New York to move up, they can get some extra draft capital. They want more picks. They could still try to get a quarterback, either Ward or Shedeur Sanders, who fits Brian Callahan's offense, by the way, and I don't think is out of the question.
Yeah, it's so interesting because obviously the Browns need a quarterback, so do the Giants, but if they fall in love with Cam Ward or Shedeur potentially, you never want to rule out them maybe getting up to 1. All right, so let's move on to our next team that we're going to place a quarterback on, and it is the Cleveland Browns. So Cleveland, Deshaun Watson currently rehabbing after re-tearing his right Achilles. He's expected to miss substantial time this season. So, Jeremy, what are the plans at quarterback in Cleveland this offseason before we get Mina and Bill's QB plan?
I know. I'm seeing the question marks, Mina and Bill. I'm curious to see what they have because the possibilities are endless at the Cleveland Browns, except when it comes to money. They're also not going to be a top-of-market money. They're paying Deshaun Watson $46 million next year to not play. So Daniel Jones, I'm hearing, is an option, potential bridge for them. Carson Wentz is on their radar. Now with Kansas City, he'll be a free agent. Yeah, so players who have done something in the league but have had to sort of redefine themselves, play the backup role a little bit. And Cleveland, look, they're firmly on the radar for a quarterback in the draft. I think they have love for Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders at this point. They're still sorting through all of that. They've had players that are at the top of the draft coming into their building over the next week or two.
Yeah, reminder, they had Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter as well as Abdul Carter there this week. Bill, what would you try and make a move for there? Who do you want to see with the Browns?
Cam Ward has to be the guy here. I think they have to come out of this offseason with a long-term replacement for Deshaun Watson. And Cam Ward obviously creates out of structure. There's some magic in his game. Look at the Final Four this year. Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, all guys who can create out of structure. And I think within the structure of the Kevin Stefanski offense, Cam Ward can make plays. He's fifth in college football in play action QBR over the past 2 seasons, completed nearly 76% of his passes, 18 touchdowns, 1 pick, not from under center, probably shotgun and pistol, but you can work out of play action. That's a great fit for the Browns.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Bill. I think it's Cam Ward. I think he has the tools that the Browns hoped they were getting when they traded for Deshaun Watson, who obviously has been a diminished player in terms of the playmaking, the out-of-structure ability, the big arm. He's got the biggest arm of any of the top quarterbacks in this draft. And it's very easy for me to imagine Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees crafting an offense tailored to his skill set. A lot of play action, a lot of RPOs, put the quarterback on the move. Now they might have to trade up to get Cam Ward, as Jeremy talked about, so we'll see what happens between them, New York and Tennessee. But he, to me, is the very clear QB1 in this draft.
Yeah, I've heard some people talk maybe potentially about Kirk Cousins being a fit for Cleveland. What's the situation with Cousins?
Yeah, Laura, this is fascinating because Cousins was on the Browns' radar. That made a lot of sense. He played with Kevin Stefanski in Minnesota. Coming out of the Combine, and even this week, though, talking to several people around the league with teams, they expect GM Terry Fontenot to keep Kirk Cousins at this point because, as somebody with Atlanta told me, we've already paid him. You know, he's due all this money that's guaranteed. It's on the books. Do we really want to pay him $90 million to go away? That's a tough pill to swallow for a front office and ownership that's already invested that much. Maybe if they hold on to him after the draft, closer to training camp, somebody gets hurt, maybe they can get a better draft pick for him in a trade. It does seem like right now there's not a lot of momentum for Cousins to go to a new team.
There are just some coaches in this league who can't quit Kirk Cousins, and I could see Kevin Stefanski, who's obviously got that history with him, being one of them, because he is sort of the prototypical quarterback, or he was, for that under-center, boot, play-action-heavy offense. I would be curious to, though, make sure, if you're the Cleveland Browns, that he can run that kind of offense because he wasn't able to last year in Atlanta. But if the money is right, it makes sense.
Have one quarterback on the roster, and it's Tommy DeVito. But they do have nearly $48 million in cap space and the third overall pick. Our Giants reporter Jordan Renan tweeted this earlier in the week coming off the NFL Combine. He said multiple league sources left their meetings with the Giants this week thinking a trade for the #1 pick with Tennessee Titans was likely. In that scenario, they expected it to be for Miami's Cam Ward. Jeremy, you've talked about team's view of Cam Ward. In this particular situation, what are you hearing about the Giants' plan at quarterback?
Yeah, Laura, the Giants are trying to regroup here because I'm told they spent about a month on Matthew Stafford and trying to make that work. And at several points, they felt that they were close to landing him. So they had this franchise quarterback, top 6 or 7 guy, couldn't make it happen. He stays in LA. So they're going to scour the earth for quarterbacks, at least in free agency. I expect anyone from Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold, the like. You know, Russell Wilson, I believe, is a sleeper option for them. Ooh. So they're sorting through all that right now. There is a little bit of momentum for Aaron Rodgers right now, it seems like. He's got the home in New Jersey, just played with the Jets. He can sort of, you know, show the Jets what he can still do by being in their backyard. Seems like an option right now, but certainly the draft is on the table and trying to move up. That seems to be something they're looking into.
Yeah, Mina, who do you like in New York?
Well, I'd like, first of all, for them to trade for Cam Ward, but I was told I'm not allowed to give him to 2 teams. So, with that in mind, if you've got the Browns getting Cam Ward, I'm going to have the New York Giants take Shedeur Sanders with their 3rd overall pick and staying put for that reason. I do think Brian Daboll can call an offense with his skill set, his accuracy, ability to throw the ball with anticipation over the middle of the field. That said, I do think they would have to improve that offensive line. If you're bringing in Sanders, who of course played behind a terrible offensive line in college, you'd like to see him play with better protection so that he plays in structure more, but he's certainly capable of it.
This is the Sam Darnold spot for me. I just look at what Brian Daboll did with Daniel Jones, getting the ball out quick, eliminating some of the sacks we saw. This is a Giants organization that Jeremy said was all in on Matthew Stafford. They are going after veteran quarterbacks, I think in part because Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen see this as their last chance before possibly losing their jobs if they don't win this offseason. I think this Giants team is closer than people might give them credit for. They have an excellent pass rush. They were 1-7 in one-score games last year. They're probably going to be a little better than people realize if they can just get this quarterback spot right. And then from Sam Darnold's perspective, you're adding Malik Neighbors to the mix, a star receiver, offensive line. Andrew Thomas is good. Right side of the line has to get some work, but this is a spot that I think is more promising than maybe some people realize right now.
Ooh. If you missed it, he kind of slipped that in at the end. He said, I hope it's in our town. What are you hearing, Jeremy, about the plans for the Raiders at quarterback?
So they're gauging the market right now. I don't get the sense that the Raiders are overly thrilled about some of the options out there, but they'll look at Sam Darnold. Certainly Chip Kelly, the new offensive coordinator, they're paying him a lot to run the offense, so he will have a heavy influence. That's why I think Justin Fields could be in the mix there as an athletic quarterback. Look, Marcus Mariota goes way back with him. That could be a backup option for them potentially. Geno Smith. Now, this is a sort of a name to watch here because Seattle's been open for business on a lot of trades. We're looking at DK Metcalf, some of these others. Could there be interest with Pete Carroll trying to reunite with Geno? He wants to get this going early in Vegas. He doesn't want to rebuild.
Yeah.
So maybe they could at least have some talks there, but nothing really moving right now. I will point out Seattle does want to sign Geno to a long-term contract. They've at least started those talks.
All right, Mina, who makes sense for you there with the Raiders?
Well, not Geno Smith, because Seattle should not trade him. That would be foolish unless they're resigned to a rebuild. There's zero path for them to improve at quarterback, in my opinion. All right, back to the Raiders. If I'm Sam Darnold, this would be my preferred destination for a few reasons. I think this offensive line does need a little bit of work, but there are good players on the line already, so there's building block, and obviously you saw last year Brock Bowers is an absolute superstar. I also like the combination of Darnold with Chip Kelly. I love watching him evolve as a play caller at Ohio State, calling a more pro-style offense, shall we say, with a very creative run game. I think that would be well-suited to Sam Darnold's skill set. He can play under center. He can execute the play-action game well. So to me, you get that offense working and improving upon what we saw last year pretty quickly with Sam Darnold.
I know Jeremy said they don't want to get deep into a rebuild with Pete Carroll. I know Max Crosby wants a 41-year-old quarterback. The Raiders are realistically in a rebuild. They had 14 first and second round picks from the Josh McDaniels and John Gruden era. They have one starter from those 14 picks, Colton Miller, the first of those selections. That's why I'm saying Shedeur Sanders is the pick here. You need a long-term solution. Shedeur Sanders is a work in progress. He is talented, he is smart, he is accurate, but I think he's susceptible to the same kind of hero ball stuff we saw with Caleb Williams in Chicago last year. Having a great running game for him with Chip Kelly, having a heavy RPO influence, giving him quick decisions with the football, letting his accuracy play up, all that fits for me in the desert. And we know Tom Brady is a big fan of the Sanders family, and vice versa. He's going to be involved in this conversation. To me, I think Shedeur Sanders is a building block for the Raiders if they take it.
Okay, I like it. They pick at 6, though, Jeremy. You hear that Shedeur would still be available by that point, or you think they'd have to trade up?
Well, out of the two quarterbacks, Ward or Sanders, if one is going to fall to 6, it would probably be Shedeur. So the Raiders could sort of gauge that market closer to late April, see if they need to move up a spot or two, or if they could sit tight. So the way quarterbacks get pushed up, though, it might be safe to try to make a trade there. I don't know if he's going to fall that far.
Both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are free agents. Ownership said earlier in the offseason it was unlikely that both would be back. So which should they keep? Former Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger weighed in this week.
I'd like to see what Fields can do in another year of that offense because there's some familiarity. Right? He's had a new system every year. He may be more comfortable. Yeah. Obviously, we're not taking into account contracts and all that. Some of the mobility stuff would be interesting. I know he's got a good arm, and again, not taking anything away from Russ, but it feels like Fields could be the pick of the future if you wanted.
Jeremy, you have a read yet on what Pittsburgh may do?
It's been so long since Big Ben played and they had success like that. Maybe they'll bring him back. But so from what I've been told, they've been leaning Justin Fields in that Fields-Wilson equation. Both sides are open to a potential deal. They have had discussions, but my sense after making calls today is that Fields will likely test free agency at this point, at least going to Monday. He's close enough to it. He will have some interest. The New York Jets, I expect to potentially have some interest. Could be some others. The fact that Matthew Stafford stayed in L.A. keeps a musical chair seat available for him. So we'll see how it shakes out. I still think it could be Fields or Wilson, maybe with a Darnold or Aaron Rodgers in this sort of back pocket. They still have to sort of gauge 4 or 5 options just in case their top ones fall through.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good illustration of what a lot of these teams are dealing with. Mina, who do you think would be a good fit for the Steelers in 2025 at QB?
Yeah, not a lot of great options. I don't hate the idea of running it back with Fields, who I thought played fine for them last year. He did some things that I thought you can really build on. Took fewer sacks, had the lowest sack rate of his career. Was generally better at playing on time within structure. But I will say, if they do bring him back, I'd actually like to see him unleashed a little bit more. I was sometimes frustrated watching. I felt like he didn't take enough chances downfield, or wasn't quite the explosive playmaker we saw in Chicago. So if they brought him back, maybe without Russell Wilson, looking over his shoulder, he could be a little bit more free and play more free. And I think that would be, you'd get more higher upside out of him in Pittsburgh this season.
Yeah, could see Justin Fields coming back. I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers. I think this is the landing spot for him here, just because of what the Steelers want from their offense. They want the offense basically to protect the football. They win with defense. They win with special teams. Over the last 4 years, when they win or tie the turnover battle, 36-11, but just 2-18-1 when they lose the turnover battle. And the one thing at this point Aaron Rodgers can do is protect the football. Last 10 games with the Jets, 18 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions. You're not asking him to be the Aaron Rodgers of 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but can he protect the football? Can he make smart decisions? Can he get you off the field with a kick, either a field goal, an extra point, or a punt? I think he can do that. And by the way, this team needs to win a playoff game. TJ Watt has played his entire career in Pittsburgh and has not won a playoff game. That seems unimaginable to me, given how talented this defense has been.
I do wonder, with as many great wide receivers available in free agency, if they can add somebody there, like a Chris Godwin potentially. And just as a fan, I'm curious, do you think that these quarterback moves are going to happen, Jeremy, like at noon on Monday, really fast, boom, boom, boom? Or is this the type of thing that can drag out a little bit?
Well, some of that depends on Sam Darnold because he's considered the top guy. Does he re-sign in Minnesota is the question right now. I do believe that they're trying. They're open to him coming back, but they're not going to mortgage their future to do so. They've got other players like cornerback Byron Murphy that they want to pay. And so my sense is Darnold will be in that sort of Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield weight class of a contract. So if he gets done something with Minnesota, that opens it up for maybe Fields to go early. I do expect at least one to sign, pretty close to the bell on Monday. Yeah,
we felt like Stafford was that first domino to affect other things. He stays in LA, so now we really haven't seen the other dominoes fall, but we will see them happening soon. And we've been placing quarterbacks on all these teams, so here's what it actually ended up looking like. The quarterback plan, Mina has Aaron Rodgers with the Titans. Bill, of course, went the Will Howard option. You got both picking Cam Ward for the Browns, New York, with Mina sending Shador there. Sam Darnold was the choice for the Giants by Bill. Shador was the choice for him for the Raiders, and then Sam Darnold for Mina. Justin Fields stays in Pittsburgh for Mina, and Aaron Rodgers goes there, which means Russell Wilson did not make the cut with the quarterback plan for Mina and Bill.